Hello. I think I'm live. I am not the most tech savvy person in the world. So I am not used to this live screen. There I go. There I am. Hi. Welcome to my first Facebook Live event of the month. Well, it's almost the last day of March. And these events will be throughout April. But welcome. Let me see. I'm going to hang out for just about 5 minutes or so before we actually get into the content. So I am author and speaker Sarah R. Turnquist, and I am coming to you from Middle Tennessee, and it is just beautiful out here. For the last couple weeks, it's either been cold outside or it's been raining. So neither one of those conditions have been ideal for being outside, but in the last several days, it's been really, really nice. So I've spent some time outside about every day, and who doesn't like that? People who don't like bugs, that's who. So, but it's pretty nice other than the bugs. Although I do like those memes on Facebook where people are showing that the mosquitoes are waking up and they're like, what's going on? Where are the people? Some of these Facebook memes out there are really funny. Because I'm one of those people that tends to like to find the levity in the situation. I tend to laugh through hard times. Not that I don't take it seriously, but I tend to enjoy finding a laugh every now and then when I can. So got to have my coffee. I have these Starbucks mugs. I collect them. This one is actually Nashville, Middle Tennessee. I'm trying to think of where I have my farthest away one. I have one from Alaska. I had one from Prague. And then one of my kids broke it. And I was like, they're not broken, they're not broken, they're not broken. I still have it. It's glued together, so we don't drink from it, but good times. So, well, I'll go ahead and get started. Again, I'm author and speaker Sarah R. Turnquist, and I'm coming from Middle Tennessee, where it is beautiful and green and the flowers are starting to bloom. I love springtime. And I am a multi-published clean historical romance author, and I will be sharing today my first ever published novel with you and its first sequel. And maybe I'll share a bit or two about the third book in the series that is right now a work in progress. We'll see. But feel free to ask questions in the comments, and I have someone answering questions. If the questions get too hard or they don't know the answers, I will get to them after the live event and hang out, and we'll be giving details about the giveaway at the end of the live event. So first, I would like to introduce you to the book. Here it is. It is The Lady BORNEKOVA. And this book will forever hold a special place in my heart. It was my first manuscript. I'm not going to block my face here. I'm going to try. It's weird because this is flipped. So when I move this way, I'm actually moving. It's just weird. So this was my first manuscript that got picked up by a publisher, the first one to get a cover, the first one to break out into the market. And so it just has a special place in my heart for that reason. The cover is designed by Cora Graphics. She's amazing. And I fell in love with it immediately. So the cover does feature the main character, the lady Karin BORNEKOVA. And it also has this tagline on it, if I can get to it, right up there. And it says, "Murderous intentions and looming civil war. Can true love survive?" Intrigued yet? So you can tell a couple of things from the cover. You can tell that it's historical. You can tell that there is a lead female character, and you can tell that there's some kind of murderous kind of something going on, a murdering plot going on, and some kind of civil war and a romance. And then we're going to do what pretty much everyone will do at this point in the bookstore. We're going to flip it over and read the back cover copy. It says, "Would you be brave enough to defy everyone to hold true to what you believe? The red-headed Karin is strong-willed and determined, something she inherited from her father. She tries to keep her true nature a secret to avoid being deemed a traitor by those loyal to the king. Karin and her father butt heads over her duty to her family and the Czech Crown. She is then sequestered to the Royal Viscount's hunting lodge. Not aware of everything that is happening, she becomes the target of an individual with murderous intent. Her heart soon becomes entangled, though her father intends to wed her to another. The turmoil inside Karin deepens and reflects the turmoil of her homeland on the brink of the Hussite Wars." At that point in the bookstore, many people will open to the they'll either make a decision to buy the book, or they may open to the first page and read a few lines of the first chapter. Some people who are evil, I'm not judging if you're one of those people, no offense intended, will flip to the back and see how it ends. That just seems really odd to me. But some people are like that, and to each his own. But as an avid reader myself, that just seems so, why would you do that? But some people need to do that. So I've lost my place. But the Hussite Wars are mentioned there on the back cover copy. And I do realize that many of my readers, and probably many of you, if you haven't read the book, probably are not overly familiar with the Hussite Wars. In fact, when I was beginning my professional writing journey as a graduated college student, I am not sure that I'd ever even heard of the Hussite Wars. So that's really where the journey of this book began, right there after I graduated college. And so this is where the inspirational story will begin. And writers really call this the spark or the seed, basically the idea that started it all. So that summer after I graduated college, I was invited to be part of a team that went to the Czech Republic for a number of days to participate in a language camp in the Krokonoš Mountains of the Czech Republic. And when we flew into Prague, we had a couple of days to do some sightseeing, and our leader set up a trip to this beautiful, smallish, as castles go, it was smallish, structure in the kind of outside of the village of Hussite Králové. And we were told that this was more like or it was a hunting lodge, like a hunting chateau for the royal family at one point. So I was just enthralled. I was enthralled with the grounds and the area around it, and the architecture and the decor and everything like that. So the wheels in my head started turning, and by the time we were done with our tour of everything, the story had pretty much taken form. But when I write a story, when the novel comes together, I take the love story and historical event, and I kind of put the two together and weave those together to form the novel. So I didn't have the historical event. But as my time in the Czech Republic continued, I learned about the Hussite Wars, these great events in the Czech Republic that are really rather important to the people there, big part of their history. As it turns out, there was a man named Jan Hus in the late 1400s, so think medieval period, and he had some challenges to some of the former practices of the Catholic Church. So think Martin Luther before Martin Luther was alive. So Hus was brought in to be questioned and actually martyred for his objections to the Catholic Church. And his martyrdom brought forth the conflict between his followers, so mostly the Czechs, and the Pope slash, loyal Catholics, which was pretty much other nationalities that lived in the Bohemian lands and the surrounding area. The war, these Czech wars, the Hussite Wars, lasted about 15 years. So we're talking a religious civil war marked by several anti-Hussite crusades. This is pretty massive. The Lady Bornekova, though, the first book, I'm going to hold it up again because I just love the cover, is set right on the cusp of the breakout of conflict, of actual fighting. So just as the wars are starting. And so I'll read an excerpt from the book, if you don't mind. And I'm here, and so I'm going to call the shots, if you don't mind. This is an excerpt from chapter 7, and just because I care about these kinds of things, the chapter is called Danger. And the hero in the story, his name is Pavel, which, for those of you that care, is kind of an American version of Paul, or it's a Czech version of the American name Paul. So it's a very common name. But anyways, Pavel stretched the bowstring back as far as it would go, feeling the strength in the weapon as he pulled it taut. He, Stepan, and Zdeněk were testing different bows, gauging weight and general feel in preparation for their next outing. Their morning hunts were spent on horseback with a crossbow. That afternoon, they would be traveling on foot and would take on the challenge of the more traditional bow and arrow. They perused the Viscount's rather extensive collection of hunting equipment to find pieces that would best suit them. Stepan had the added advantage of greater familiarity with the selection. A loud wham disrupted their concentration. They exchanged glances. What had made that sound? It seemed to come from the outside. Perhaps the large front door had been flung open? Zdeněk seemed to have the same idea as he moved to the window. His eyes widened and his mouth became drawn. Pavel and Stepan's gazes clashed as they moved toward the window. A servant girl, who couldn't have been more than 17, was thrown out onto the dirt. She recoiled from the strong voice and words coming down on her from her overseer. The girl's olive-colored skin was bruised and swollen from a beating, and much of her dark hair had been pulled free of a ponytail and now hung around her face, disguising her features. Pavel peered at Stepan. What was happening here? Should they step in to defend the girl? He was prepared to, but it was not truly his place. Rather, it was Stepan, or his father, who should speak against such treatment. The girl is a Hussite, came Stepan's simple reply. His eyes fixed on the scene below. Was that disgust in his voice? And why did he speak as if this fact alone explained the abuse? And this implores such treatment? Pavel spoke with a boldness unlike him. The emotions that welled within him were heated. Stepan glared at him, confusion naked on his face. She's also a thief, he added. The constable will be here soon to collect her. Pavel knew it was a fabrication. If the girl had been found with stolen goods, they had been planted. The Viscount, and by extension Stepan, were loyal to the king's brother Sigismund. Thus, they would, of course, share in his special hatred for Jan Hus and his followers. But Pavel never would have expected such extreme apathy from the men Pavel thought he knew. Another sound interrupted his thoughts, this one from the hall. Here you are, Karin's lilting voice came from behind. Pavel closed his eyes, wishing her away. He did not want her to see the happenings below, but it would be unavoidable as she saw that they were transfixed on the events outside the window. It would break her heart, as well it should. How would she react? Would she give the truth of her loyalty to Jan Hus away? Zdeněk spoke, moving away from the window. Karin, what brings you to seek us out? Pavel prayed Zdeněk's attempt to deflect Karin's attention from being exposed to the girl's plight would be successful. What are you looking at? She asked, unmoved by his efforts at distraction. It is nothing, Stepan said in earnest, as if he truly failed to see the problem. Could he not? Was he this cold? This inhumane? She walked toward the window. Pavel tried to stop her, taking a step forward to block her, but Karin caught his eyes. Could she see it had struck a chord? Did she already know him so well? As he gazed into the depths of her green orbs, he knew he would not be able to keep her from it. She was determined to find out for herself. He did not stop her again as she moved past him. Closing his eyes, he prayed she would have the presence of mind not to expose herself or him. Perhaps if she saw, she would understand how dangerous it was, how important it was to be careful, and how low Hussites were viewed in the homes of those loyal to Sigismund. She came to the window, she gasped. Karin's hands went up against the opening as if to reach out to the girl. What was all Karin could manage. She is a Hussite and a thief, Stepan said in a firm, flat voice without feeling. Constable will be here soon to collect her, and we will be rid of her. Is this how you treat all thieves? Karin dared to ask. Stepan met her eyes. He stepped toward Karin and his voice became timid. She fought back when the manservant tried to remove her from her quarters. It was not true. As Pavel glanced around the room, he would wager that the others knew it too. What could they do but accept it? Pavel noted the tenderness in Stepan's voice as he moved ever closer to Karin. It would have been easy for Karin to mistake it as concern for the young girl, but it was for Karin's benefit. Why? As Stepan neared Karin, Pavel's eyes narrowed, and he found a new source of anger rising in him. No, he did not want Stepan any closer to Karin. He could not allow it. His hands balled into fists, and he fought the urge to lash out. But as Stepan came within an arm's length of Karin, she moved away from the window, backing away from Stepan, or away from the scene. Who could discern? Silence fell for several moments. Stepan looked after Karin. He seemed wounded. Pavel watched the distance between Stepan and Karin, the anger within him cooling as that space grew. Did you need something, Lady Karin? Zdeněk asked. Was it a hope to change the subject? No, I just... She placed a hand over her mouth. Was she unsettled? Queasy? Please excuse me. She turned and rushed from the room, grazing Pavel's legs with her skirt as she left. His heart sank. I will see that she is well, Pavel said, excusing himself. He did not care what the others might think, not in that moment. Once in the hall, Pavel found it difficult to catch her. Karin quit the room with as much speed as she could muster, and kept going. Pavel lengthened his stride in order to close the distance. Karin, he called as he approached, lest he startle her. She turned. Unshed tears pooled in her eyes. Pavel, that was horrible. We have to do something. We cannot just... All too aware of their surroundings, he pulled her into an empty study behind him. Only then did he pull her into his embrace, holding her to himself. She quieted in his arms, leaning into him. If there was something I could do for her, I would. His voice was just above a whisper. But I cannot. It is a lie, only because she's a Hussite. Hot tears fell from her eyes. Pavel felt them through his shirt. I know. Everyone knows, he whispered near her ear. It's not right. She was quieter, calmer, but still incensed. I know, Karin, it is not. He stroked her hair. What are we going to do? She clutched his shirt tighter. She no longer spoke of the servant girl. She wanted to know about their safety. We'll be careful, Karin. And Karin? Yes, came her small voice. He pulled back so he could catch her eyes. If this ever comes to something bigger, I don't know, perhaps war breaks, being in this place or in the home of any other family loyal to Sigismund, to be found a Hussite will not mean irons, it will mean the sword. Do you understand? A small sound escaped her. He hoped she did understand. If there were war between the two, Hussites would be considered traitors in the eyes of the royals, and traitors were executed. Still unable to speak, she nodded at him. He pulled her back into his arms and held her as tightly as he dared, feeling the full force of the ferocity of his love for her. And that's where the scene ends. So, one of the other things I wanted to share, if we can, a lot of emotion, that scene. One of the other things that's unique about this book is the way I created the characters. Now, even though this was the first book published, it was not the first book that I wrote. So for all my other books, and for authors and writers, all writers create characters in a variety of different ways. And some, like me, create characters even from book to book in different ways. For my other books, characters are created in my imagination, probably made up from bits and pieces of different people I know, maybe a little bit from other characters I've seen and read, not intentionally, of course, but, just things that have been impressed on me about different heroes and heroines in time, perhaps some real, some in fables and things like that, things that are pressed into your subconscious. And maybe even some a little bit pulled from my personality. But the Lady Bornekova, these characters are actual models or copies, if you will, of people that I met in the Czech Republic. So Zdeněk, for example, there is a person in the Czech Republic that I met and spent time with, that Zdeněk, that personality, and even the physical description of this character came from that person. So that is kind of cool for me as I spend time in these books, and even as I continue to write this series, to kind of continue to spend time with these people in a way. So yeah, that's really interesting for me. So after The Lady Bornekova comes the sequel that is already published, well, if I can hold it up, The Lady and the Hussites. And so the tagline here is, when the heart is at war, can love conquer all? And I would read the back cover copy, except it contains spoilers for the first book. So for the sake of those of you that have not read The Lady Bornekova, I will not read the back cover copy because I want to honor those of you that do not want to go into a book knowing some things about the ending. But I will tell you this about the book. It does take the characters that we have come to know, some of them that we have come to know from the first book, and follow them into the Hussite Wars. And we continue to follow Karin's story, and the spotlight widens, if you will, to encompass a a romance that grows for another one of the characters. So if that makes sense. So the first book features Karin and her romance. And then the second book takes another character. And so we continue Karin's story and we follow another romance. And so the story kind of grows that way as we continue into the Hussite Wars. And so the third book, which is a work in progress right now, is a continuation of that story. But they are all unique in the sense that there is something, there is something that they are following in the story. There is a beginning, a middle, and an end to the story, and definitely a good conclusion to the story. The reader will be satisfied at the end, and then look forward to the continuation in the next story. Something I do want to speak to in the history of the second book. We are introduced to the commander of the Czech army. His name was Jan Žižka. And one of the things that I thought was very interesting about him when I did my research is that he lost one of his eyes in his youth, or lost the use of his eye. It's a little unclear, but he wore a patch. So that was a little interesting when I wrote scenes with him, because it would be like, another character looked into his eye. It was a little strange. I had to do a little bit of explanation to my editor that no, I don't mean eyes. He doesn't have eyes. He has eye. So even so, though, he is heralded by historians as a great commander, especially since most of his army was made up of peasants and farmers, and most of their weaponry consisted of farming implements and tools. They really had to use what they had at their disposal. They were not soldiers. So just a little interesting tidbit. But Jan Žižka created these war wagons that he utilized in his battle tactics that seemed very effective, very efficient in the way that he waged war. So you can learn more about that by searching and looking at the war wagons, or you can read the Lady and the Hussites, and learn a little bit more about that. Now for my readers out there that don't care to read about war, I'm with you. I am not one that likes to read a lot of battle, a lot of fighting, and so I don't write that way. So even though the book follows them into the Hussite Wars, the book is really about the interaction between the characters, and is about the relationships between the characters and what the conflict is doing to them in their lives and their relationships. It's not about the actual combat, if that makes sense. So don't look at this book and think you're going to read a lot of battle scenes. I'm not going to say there are no hints of battle scenes in there, but there are not. There's not gore in there. There's not battle scenes upon battle scenes. It's just not like that. It's about the people. That's what I'm interested in, and that's what I want to share about my characters. It's about my characters and what they're going through. So, you can probably hear my family in there. So that's what's going on in this book series. So here we get to the giveaway. And here's how the giveaway is going to work. I will pose a question here in the live video and invite you to answer in the comment section. I will collect responses for the next 24 hours. So for those that will be able to watch the video after we stop the live broadcast, can still comment. So we will gather names up until, let me look at the clock, 2:30 tomorrow. So my little elf over there, if he'll help me remember that, we will gather responses until 2:31 p.m. Central Standard Time on Tuesday. Then we'll do a random drawing of the names in the comments that have commented until 2:31 p.m. Central Standard Time. And the winner will receive a paperback copy of The Lady BORNEKOVA and The Lady and the Hussites and a $10 Amazon gift card. If for whatever reason the person who wins already has a paperback copy of these books, they will be able to select two of my other novels that they don't have. And because I know this might come up, we will be shipping from Amazon. We will not be shipping from our home, just for sensitivity reasons due to the situation in the world right now. So unfortunately, I won't be able to sign them. Sorry. But for safety reasons, they will come from Amazon's warehouse. So here's the question. What historical couple would you like to read a story about? Either fiction or nonfiction. The story, either fiction or nonfiction. So think about historical couples in time. Generally, historical fiction is considered pre-World War II. I think they just updated that to include. They just updated that date, and I don't remember what it's up to. But I'm not going to put a date on this. Just any couple in time. What couple in time would you like to read a story about? Whether you'd like to read a nonfiction story about them or a fictional story. I just want to hear what couples y'all like. So I obviously write about fictional couples, so this really doesn't apply here, but I just want to hang out with you guys and get to know what some of your favorite couples are. So I have been excited to hang out with you, and I am eager to read your responses, and I look forward to seeing you on Thursday, and we will talk about my first book that I wrote, the second one to get published, The General's Wife, and it is set in ancient Egypt. So we will talk about that. And so I will let you go and see you on Thursday.